Please welcome this evening's guest moderator, Donna Friedkin, and tonight's guests, Richard Linklater, Julie Delpy, and Ethan Hawke.
Thank you so much for coming. I have to say, on a personal note, I get paid to see movies for a living, and most of the stuff you see is really, whatever. This was amazing.
Thank you.
At what point, what was the genesis of this film specifically? It's obviously the third in the trilogy, which is repetitive, but it kind of concludes the story of Jesse and Celine.
The third in the trilogy.
The third in the quartet.
So the genesis is obviously the first two films, but I don't know. It was kind of like doing the second film. Although no one wanted the second film, we all got asked about, are we going to make a third film? I guess when you make a second, it begs the question. But it was probably the same 6 or 7 years of not having any ideas about it. And then we all start talking and realize Jesse and Celine are at a new place in their lives and have something to say. You know?
One of the things that happened, when we made the first film in 1994, Before Sunrise, we kind of left it behind. And Richard asked Julie and I to be a part of his film, Waking Life. And that was the first time the three of us were really like alone in a room trying to be creative together. And it was only 2 or 3 days that we worked on it, but we had a blast. And I feel like Julie and I left Austin thinking, we should work together again.
Well, even in Austin, we looked at each other and said, okay, we should do it. Let's get over our
revisit Jesse
fear.
and Celine.
Because it's scary. It's scary to go back into the same characters because you feel like that was a special time for us.
And people really have ownership of those characters.
Yeah.
And that feeling of maybe we'll make it worse was very difficult with the third film because those Before Sunrise and Before Sunset are movies that, we really enjoyed making and they mean a lot to us. And so the possibility that we might undermine them by making a really lousy third one is a kind of choking fear.
Stressful, it's stressful. Stakes, for us at least.
So how did you guys develop the storyline for this one? The shootouts, the drug addictions, it's all very dramatic. Yeah.
Sex changes. There's always a period of like 5 years, 6 years where we don't even look into, I think the first film we didn't even look into, a second one for 5, 6 years, and then this one we kind of left it, alone for 5, 6 years, and then we started, should we meet and talk about it? And then, let's meet and talk about it. So in 2010 or something, we met and started talking about a possibility of a third one.
Developed an outline.
Yeah,
a pretty
developed
specific
an
outline.
And I guess the pivotal moment was when we realized we all wanted to write about the same thing. I think if that didn't happen, we probably wouldn't have made the movie. Like, if somebody really was thinking about a different kind of subject. But the fact that we all had the kind of same end goal allowed us to be in the room together and write.
For each of you, what's your creative process like? Do you sit down and write for a certain number of hours every day, or does it just kind of come at you in spurts?
On this project or
Yes.
life in general?
On this project.
Because this is very different than I'm sure, we all have these creative outlets, our other, films and
Julie directs
stuff.
and does craft services and soundtracks and everything else in her movies, and Ethan does a lot of theater.
Ethan does theater, writes novels. We all have our thing. But this time was a little different because on the second film, we did spend a lot of time alone.
Emailing each other.
And we had this thing going. But this time around, I think parenthood had overwhelmed everyone just enough that...
Also Parenthood mixed was directing 2 movies in a row after giving birth. Just crazy.
So we had to
idea.
get in a room together this time. We had an outline. We were all had a bunch of ideas, and we had been working a little bit, but we sat in a room for 10 weeks, basically. That was the
birthing room.
Birthing room.
Julie gave birth,
We had
and
to
then
kind of lock ourselves outside of the world because otherwise we would have never been able to
in Greece,
really focus.
we sat down and just did it. It was pretty grueling, actually. Fun. We all get along.
But hard, because we knew we were going to shoot at the end of that. When the other films, there was an original script, and then we worked entirely. Then the second film, we had almost the film.
Right.
Like
Before we even went to
before
Paris.
Sunset, before we got to Paris, there was a screenplay that was going from beginning to end, even though we had to rewrite a lot of stuff. And this one, we had little. I mean, that was really scary. To me, like me, I was terrified. I know he was, but he doesn't show it. And Ethan is very self-secure, so he knew he was going to pull it off. But
That's her way of saying he's an asshole.
And Julie, I was actually only half kidding about the craft services. For 2 days in New York, you produced, you wrote, you directed, you acted in it. Was this
She scored the film?
I scored.
Was this?
She edited it.
Is it easier for you to kind of
Edited.
just act, so to speak, or is there more
No,
pressure?
it's well, we did the writing part, but then once that was done, you know, the director went to direct, and we actors went to rehearse, because that's one thing that's really hard with those 3 films is the amount of dialogue, and also in a way, you know, like the way it is directed, which is, you know, I think really great, which is like those long takes, because it gives that sense of reality and naturalism, but it's actually really hard to do as an actor, because you have to be, so that's our part. It's,
I
you
get
know,
a
it's
perverse thrill out of when we do that segue from the writing and then, okay, I'm making a movie and they're acting in the movie, and I get this look once I can see their faces when they really fully understand how much dialogue they have to memorize.
that
It's
we
one thing
wrote.
You're writing and you think, oh, it'd be great
there's
if
a
I had this
certain-
huge speech.
There's
and I
a
talked about
certain
this.
fear
And you
and a
have to
certain
memorize
little,
it. You
and we've
wanna
done it
cut
before, but then and then it was like, oh, and I want to do that whole scene in like one
shot.
take. I
Yeah.
think we can, and they just get like, oh,
No, but I
God.
foresee
they have
it-
to work so hard.
Yeah.
It-
it all looks like improv.
Yeah, that's, but it isn't at all.
Yeah, no, it's. But actually, no. I mean, you know, when I'm directing myself, it's very difficult because I have to constantly check on the monitor and stuff. And working with Rick and knowing, I mean, I trust him 100% on, you know, what he's doing as a director. So I never even look at the monitor. I'm basically, you know, and that's very relaxed. I mean, you know, it's in comparison, it's a little less. It's another kind of stress because those. Like, as he said, are very stressful takes, but at least, you know, it's easier for me a little bit, you know.
Ethan, what was the biggest challenge for you in revisiting Jesse?
I think the biggest challenge was what I mentioned is the fear of these movies are special to me, you know, and you know they're not a job. It's some. The first film, when Julie and I met in '94 in Vienna, Rick really.
It's not for the money you're making this film.
Oh, it's always for the money. Everything's for money. But if Rick really encouraged Julie and I to contribute, and in a way that I'd never been asked to before, and I don't think it's any coincidence that after that movie, Julie and I both went on to write and direct, and it was a very empowering experience to have somebody that you really respect. You know, Rick had made Slacker and Dazed and Confused at that moment, and I had a lot of respect for him, and he treated us with a lot of respect. And it's an empowering experience to have somebody do that and say, you write that scene, you know, you come on, you can do it. What's the thing you said? Let's write that down. Come on, and so the movies took on a large. They mean something to me, and you know, you don't want to do that. We don't want to be together just because we're friends and we enjoy it. We don't want to, you know, put water in the beer, so to speak. You know, we want to really contribute, and that I think was what made sitting in the room such an intense time this third time, and also the fact that they're 40 now, and so their problems are, the movies inherently get richer and more difficult to write.
Well, it's, yeah, you get more, I mean, I don't know why. Someone told me life gets simpler and easier
What?
as you get
Who
older.
told you this?
What age is that?
Yeah. Were you talking to my son?
90.
You know,
It's simple.
like what?
Like
95, when he
Yeah.
started losing it, you know, it's like, then it gets easier. It's like you don't know what's going on anymore. But like, and no, respect to every, you know, my grandma died at 100. She was 100% there until the end. But anyway, but no, I don't know. Someone told me it gets easier, but it's not getting easier. It's
just
actually
gets
more
more
complex.
complicated,
Yeah,
yeah.
it gets more complicated.
But you
I
kind of
think.
let things go too. You know,
I
you're
guess
less.
you realize
just-
what's important. Or you hope you
Yeah,
do.
your priorities shift around. So.
And I just wanted to talk a little bit also about how unforced and naturalistic the film is, the way it was shot. And I love that quote from Julie during one of your many Q&As that people don't have sex wearing bras. And that pretty much exemplifies how the relationship scenes were shot in the movie. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, as intimate as we are, and we've known each other 19 years now, I mean, we still have to remind ourselves, it's like, okay, well, you guys have been together 9 years, it's not out of the ordinary if you grab someone in a really familiar way, in a really,
What do you mean
a
by
place.
that? Grab somebody in a familiar way. What exactly
Well, you have
do
to
you
see
mean
the
by that?
movie to
Yeah,
see
yeah.
we're holding back a little bit.
But it's also funny.
But no,
to-
the first time you touched Julie, she was kind of like, who are you? I'm like, come on, you've had a kid with this guy, you've kids, get used to it. But so
you're bored to
You know,
tears.
it's
There's
almost
a
weird. Like I had to
intellectual-
disconnect my brain from entirely kill Julie inside my brain because I was like seeing Ethan kissing my breast. I was like, what the fuck?
You really have to.
Sorry.
It's said that every woman who I've ever been with says he kisses my breast.
No, it's actually, people think, we're comfortable with each other, but it's actually
No.
really weird because he's it's weird. It's like an old friend.
Because
kissing-
he's old.
because he's old. No, but it's funny. I mean, it's really, that's what acting is about, I guess. I mean, I don't know.
I found it
Settling
really
in and
easy.
being comfortable.
I'll do it right now.
Do it.
No.
And I know you've probably been asked this a million times. Do you see yourself doing another one, or is this it?
I mean, right now, I don't think we see ourselves doing anything.
The intensity of the work when we work on these films. I mean, we joke about it because, we have to. Otherwise, it sounds a little crazy. But it's true that the intensity of the work is so much. Like, we can't even think about it for 5-6 years. Like, it's... In the process of writing, we try so much to be as true as possible. I mean, I know it sounds weird because a lot of people think people that make movies, it's about, the job and the business and all this. But actually, those films, I have to say most of what I'm trying to do, and Ethan and Richard too, is like, we really enjoy making movies. And so we try to be as truthful as possible and really follow our creative... it's wonderful to be able to express yourself. I mean, I don't know if anyone here is a creative person, but, in some way or anything, I'm sure many people here are, in many ways, because I think everyone is creative in some way. It's a wonderful thing to be able to do. And I think, but it's so intense that it really takes time to rebuild that capacity at doing it again. Like, it's not like, you need to build again, It's not something you can just get out and that.
Once
and
you're
have
done with this
Yeah.
Q&A, you're going to go to Starbucks and start writing,
Right.
the next
Well,
one.
We like working together, but that alone isn't the reason to do a film. We've been here 2 times now, and we're not going to do it just to do it. We'd have to. Jesse and Celine would have to have something to say.
Something to say, yeah. We need
about-
to feed,
But if we kept our 9-year thing, they would be 50 and
50 years old.
2022. 2021.
I think about the first one, and I think to where I was in my life, and it's so fascinating to have these cinematic mementos of your life.
It's strange, I think if you couldn't plan something like this. I was saying to somebody the other day that I feel like these movies happen to us. You couldn't, if you'd planned to do a romantic movie that spans
Over
20
20
years and
years,
you're going to
or-
work on it every night. I mean, you would never do it, or if you did, it would seem strange. But somehow it's kind of like Jesse and Celine just keep calling us. And if that happens again, we'll make another one. And if it doesn't, this will be it.
Yeah, we're fine if we
this is
never
the end,
planned
this is
this.
the
It's,
end,
if it's just a trilogy, that's pretty great. We said that the last 2 times too.
And did you guys
We're
know,
okay.
and we'll turn this over to some of the folks here, but when you guys wrapped the first one, did you know that you had something special and so timeless?
I think when we wrapped the first one, Julie never wanted to see me again. I think she had spent
She actually
enough
told me
time.
that, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember. Did
I
I
don't
really
remember.
hate you
Julie
that
doesn't
much?
remember those
Oh,
whole
you
years.
took your top off, and it was fun. But I didn't think we were gonna make another movie. You were always taking your top off.
What are you talking about?
Come on.
He's joking. What is he talking about?
Not really. Look at our crew photo from that year. Too.
The crew photo. I flashed the breast. Oh, big deal. Americans, they can.
Well, no, it was special to us, but we wouldn't have predicted necessarily, But I think Ethan was the first one, somewhere in there, maybe after the Waking Life moment, when you used the term life project, which we all have life projects, in different things, but it was,
I was
we started-
thinking when we did. I was thinking it would be fun to do like a sequel. Like I had this of like in real time, but like a sex scene. That's how I think. I mean, that's an idea of mine.
We've been working on this little porn site that we're
Yeah.
setting up. It's really exciting. I mean, in more ways than one. But
You always talk.
why am I
we
doing
said
this? I
we
don't
said
know.
we wouldn't talk about
I know.
about those things again. No, because
When the three of us get together, it does get pretty pervy. More and more,
it's
the more
funny
we know
because we
each other,
write
the
really
older we
romantic stuff, but we can't stop saying dirty things when. No,
It's
but
real
as a joke,
NC-17,
we're
our-
very, we're very.
No, that was a sincere thing. We had this idea of like two people talking the whole time while they had sex, and that would be the
Yeah, that
the
would
movie.
be funny, like a non-stop dialogue as they're having
just
sex.
talking the whole time about other things, not like whispering sweet nothings or something. To be talking about existential crises.
All right, so I'm sure you guys have questions.
What really caught my attention was that how you build that chemistry between the two characters, and how that chemistry that you can feel through the screen, how that chemistry changed through the three
films.
movies. Yes.
I don't know. The chemistry thing is like, I guess Richard in the casting process probably
Yeah.
just
Finding two
that's why
people
he was
who-
doing the casting. Is
Yeah.
he tried us out with like different people. He's like, does she work with this guy?
Yeah,
and
who
this
looks
guy?
good together, who seems to click. Yeah.
I think chemistry is something
You don't control. It's it either.
But changes in some way through the movies. I mean, you also feel that.
Our dynamic. I mean, chemistry. I don't really know what chemistry is. It's unexplainable. It's kind of like, when we work together. I mean, we get along. I mean, we do love each other in all three. We all love each other. Not like the work session. Don't worry. It's like really we're writing. I'm saying love as like a sharing kind of creative process. And I think that chemistry is also coming from that. Like, I have a tremendous amount of respect for Ethan. I think he sort of has a little bit of respect for me. And no, but I think it's, you know what I mean? It's like, and we get each other. Like, we understand each other. And I think that's the first step, maybe, And then it's chemistry. It's like chemistry
And
between you and your
let's not-
boyfriend, between you and your
and
friends.
they're good
or-
actors. They're good actors, too. You can act that. That's important for those two
You
characters.
can fake
so.
chemistry, too, in some films.
Well, you did it great, and thank you
At
so
faking
much.
it. We did good at faking it.
Yeah.
You can,
Thank you.
You can fake sincerity. You
Yeah,
got
we
it,
can
man.
fake
You can do it.
sincerity
I
amazingly.
don't know,
well.
those long dialogue scenes, that would be pretty hard to fake. I mean,
No, but I think a lot of the acting is about like making. I mean, we have a chemistry as friends, I think, but I think transforming that chemistry into a relationship chemistry is where, I think the acting is involved. It's like we turn this into something else. What
I think-
are you going to say something funny again? I can see in your
Okay,
face
I
you're going to say a joke again.
I was gonna say that if I feel like we're playing a weird game where somebody's trying to make us say the word chemistry as much as possible, but anyway, it's just a. Never mind.
I'd like to congratulate all of you on developing a series of romantic films that resonates with as many men as women. That's not always easy to do. But my question is, the last film, the second one, Before Sunset, could you talk about the final scene? I think that's the greatest ending of any movie I ever saw. How you came up with the final line, "Baby, you're gonna miss that."
That's what
plane."
you're. I love the ending of that movie so much. It's like a little Zen koan or something. And what's, I was talking about the fear of doing a third one. It's like I almost didn't want to break the spell of that ending. It's such an odd ending, and so I don't know. Sorry, but Rick.
But you were asking the.
Who came up with that line?
First
How
off,
did you
thanks
develop
for
that scene?
the male thing. Yeah, we've always tried to keep this as much as possible, and it's really hard to achieve a feminine masculine balance of as close as you can get to 50-50 as possible. And that's it's hard to kind of get that POV, I think, in most movies. So Julie has a strong, not only feminine voice, but masculine voice too. And I think Ethan and I contribute also to the, our feminine side. So we're all kind of a mix in there, but that's always something we're going for. And as far as the end of the first movie, the second movie, we had that in the outline. It's not like something we discovered along the way.
It's written early on, yeah.
And it was really based on a lot of our writing process is just completely digressive and telling stories, and just we're trying to focus it on the work, but we really have permission to talk about anything, and we cover the gamut of politics, sex, art, culture, just anything that's on any of our minds. And Julie was actually telling that particular story about Nina Simone had just passed away, and she was talking about seeing her in concert. And so much of that, the last bit about that was
I remember really vividly being in a room.
We were sitting across the room and kind of
Julie was telling the story, and Rick goes like this. She's telling the story, and Rick just goes like this. Hey. That's the end of the movie. and that's kind of how it started.
Yeah, and then the line when Julie says, "You're going to miss that train." That plane, that I don't think that was scripted so early. I think we came to that later. Like we had to earn that one, I think. But I'm not sure. It might have been there.
I don't know. I remember. Yeah.
The first movie, we work on these as we're doing them. We're working on weekends and the night before, and this one wasn't an exception. The end of this movie was something that shifted around quite a bit. You'll see. It wasn't. It's to get the right note, you have to kind of have lived it and not just rehearsed it, but maybe filmed it. So if we're lucky enough to film in order sequentially, which we have been to some degree, particularly on the first film, that works for us,
When you guys sat down to write this one, how did you know what was authentic to Jesse and Celine? Were there a lot of plot points that you threw out, or...
Yeah, well, it's also differentiating our lives from Jesse and Celine. Once you work through their backstory, what they've been doing the last 9 years, then you can feed into that. But I think we're each other's sounding boards. If we throw out something and the other two don't like it or don't respond, we just move on to the next subject.
It's a tone thing. I think there's a certain tone that Before Sunrise set, like a mood that happens, and then Before Sunset built on that tone. And there's certain things that some of us will work on that we'll have a lot of passion for, but the other two will feel like it's just not the tone of these movies, and it's somehow right.
Yeah,
Was that
absolutely.
articulate?
We all
Like
have.
that?
We leave 95% of our material never makes it in the movie. That we bring forth all this stuff, and if it doesn't resonate with the others, it just doesn't. It doesn't fit in the movie. So, But we're always encouraging and pushing one another to, like I said, we spend a lot of time just talking. But if you say something and the other two people go, "Hey, that's funny," that should be. Often the person who's saying the story or whatever isn't necessarily thinking, "Oh, I'm saying something to be in the movie." But if your two cohorts go, "Hey, that's really good. We should let's talk more about that," then you're off and running on something that might fit in the movie somewhere. But most of our stuff obviously doesn't.
Richard, I'm kind of a contemporary of yours, a few years older, have two young sons that are almost teenagers. I look at your career, I really kind of look in their lives and where they're going and their careers, and very aware of that. And I look at you, and somewhere in your 20s, you're working on an oil rig in Houston, and in years hence that, you're working with people, my favorites, Jack Black. How does one go from there? I guess you were probably somewhere in your 20s. At that point in life, with Ethan, it was acting fairly young, and Julie has a background with parents. But how about you, making that break at that point? What was the tipping point?
I think I was always a writer. I came from a place in East Texas where making films or even being very creative wasn't really a career choice, or But so I came to it a little later. But yeah, I had a job. I saved up my money. But I think by about age 20, I had sort of discovered cinema. 20, almost 21. And so I just dedicated myself to it fully. I mean, you can't get anywhere in this world unless you're all in on whatever it is you do, you know. So I don't know what to say except, you know, you dedicate your life to it, whatever that is, you know. But I found myself just, you know, watching 600 films a year and reading books and editing all night and shooting film. And, you know, I just kind of dedicated my life to film. And if I wouldn't have been able to make my own movies, I think I would be running a movie theater or be a distributor. There's any number of things I would be doing still cinematically related because I love it so much. So I just happened to get lucky and, you know, whatever things have worked out to whatever degree for me. But I think it was just going all in on following that, but discovering it, you know, leaving myself room to figure out what I was meant to be doing, maybe.
Hi. When Before Sunset came out, I thought it was one of the greatest screenplays ever written, and I think all these years later, I believe that even more. And I think there's so much wisdom about love and relationships in that movie. I was wondering if there's a line, a set of lines, or a scene that's made any of the three movies that when you wrote it, that you were like, wow, this is it. This is so true. This is, you know, love.
I can kind of answer that question. Only it's a scary question to answer because it's inherently so self-satisfying to say, this is the moment we did that I really thought was brilliant. You know, I mean, it's a question built to, you know, designed to make us fall. But I will say that there was a moment at the very end of Before Sunrise when we were in this kind of dive motel room late at night, right before we started shooting, and Rick really wanted to print out the script for the crew the next day, and we'd just been working. I learned how to juggle. That's how bored I was. I mean, we were not bored. I mean, just pacing back and forth in this room, talking and, you know, nervously playing with these oranges. And I got on some extremely, as Julie would say, extremely pretentious riff about divine God kind of conversations. I'm 24 and I'm talking about God, and Julia was like kind of just so bored sitting to listening to me talk on the couch, and finally she said, listen, if there's any kind of God, it happens in the space between us whenever two people connect. You know, that's the only thing that I've ever felt. That all this shit about God is stupid, but that's space between us. And Rick and I looked at each other like, oh. You know? And it's a wonderful moment in Sunrise when she says that, and it comes in something that it was a thing there where Jesse says something.
I believed it then.
Jesse says some stuff that a lot of people have found unappealing about Jesse, but I think it's very, very true of a lot of young men, and where he shares a rather uncomfortable truth about himself to Celine about kind of wanting to achieve something more than he cares about family or life. I mean, he just kind of says, I sometimes think I'd just like to be good at something, you know? And she basically has an answer for why that might not lead him to a great life. And it's one of my favorite moments in that movie. And it's totally 100% Julie Delpy, you know?
Thank you.
All right.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming. The movie is fantastic, and thank you three.
Thank you for being here. This is great.
Everybody join me in thanking our panel for being so great tonight.